Okay, guys, it is 12:20 p.m. on Tuesday, February 4th, 2020. We'll get started here in a couple of minutes. Hope everybody's doing well. And just got to do a quick YouTube live on a few things here. And so, like I said, we'll get started in just a minute or two. All right, guys, we'll get started. So, good afternoon. Like I said, it's almost 12:30 now New York time on February 4th, and just a couple of things to look at here. I want to look at the couple of these Aussie pairs first. So, last night we had the RBA bank cash rate and decision come out, and it was a little bit more bullish than the market was expecting. Of course, so they didn't change the rates, which nobody was expecting to, or very few were expecting to actually see a rate change. And then the statement came out after, and this is all during the Asian session last night. And then when the statement came out, it was, I read it as pretty neutral. It didn't really see any real big change from previous, but it was a little bit more bullish, considering the mixed results of some of the economic data and the fears of the coronavirus and the fires in Australia. But I think the RBA basically considered, hey, the coronavirus and the bushfires are temporary things, and that overall, although they said they stand ready to make adjustments if necessary, they didn't really, obviously, clearly didn't feel it was necessary right now. And so we saw the RBA's, the Aussie strengthen across the board. I actually did not take any of these. I'll just tell you now. I didn't feel comfortable taking it during the Asian session, so I wanted to see if there would be follow through in the London session today, and obviously there was. And this is the 4-hour chart. So, and I wanted to just talk about, as you know, I had a triangle drawn out on these on this Euro Aussie pair. I took long last week, and I got out of it on Friday. So I did bank all the pips on this, but basically it did pretty much what it was supposed to. It came all the way back up it broke. This was the end of the triangle right here. We had this big move up, and it came right back, basically to these highs right here. I mean, just minus this big wick right here. This is it, right? So it did pretty much what it was supposed to do. I did think it would go up one more time and maybe come up to here, but it didn't, and clearly it's going down now. This is the daily chart. You can see the big red candle. This started during the Asian session last night and continues now. And again, on the shorter time frames, it's still coming. So I would expect we'll see price at least come back and retest this trend line. So I may look to eventually take this pair short, but not right now. I'll look for a nicer correction and then maybe look to go short. So in most of these pairs look the same way. This is the Aussie yen. You can see, it's been going up since the news last night, which was this candle right here. This is the hourly chart. We go out to the daily. Now, if you remember on previous videos, I had this showing as a double zigzag going down, and it did break out, and now it's coming back. Now, so we'll see, longer term. This again is a daily chart, but we'll see longer term if this is going to continue down to go up, or if this is just basically a correction to this downtrend on the longer time frame. The weekly chart again, is still down. So, whether this is a wave 4 potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, and in which case the wave 5 is not done yet. But this is going up pretty strong. So, but honestly, as long as it stays below this trend line here, the trend is still technically down. So anyways, that's the Aussie yen. They pretty much all look pretty bullish. Here's the Aussie Canadian. This one on the 8-hour chart is right up against this 200 period moving average. It looks like maybe we hit a bottom here on the daily chart, so at least temporarily. The Aussie dollar, now the US dollar has been pretty well supported, but this is still moving up. But again, the trend is clearly down. And to me, this still could be a wave 4. We're in a 1, 2, 3. This is a 4, and that eventually it'll turn back down. So, bottom line is, guys, I think the Aussie is going to, probably maintain some strength for a period of time here, maybe several days. But I do think that it really would have to, go much higher to confirm any real change in the direction here, So, sorry guys, I'm eating a little lunch. I know, really not good on the microphone. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was the Kiwi, because coming up just before the end of the New York session today, and just before the start of the Asian session, we have unemployment numbers coming out of New Zealand. I think they're due to come out at let's see, where are we here? 4:45 p.m. So this is not a good time. I hate when news comes out at this time because it's just not a good time. But 4:45 p.m. we have this news coming out: employment change and unemployment rate. Now, so they're expecting a slight improvement in the employment numbers and staying the same on the unemployment rate. Okay, so you keep that in mind. No change in the unemployment rate, 4.2%, and a slight tick up in the actual employment numbers. So higher is better in this case. Okay, so back to the chart. So earlier today, when I was looking at the Euro Kiwi, I was like, well, it was back over here. I'm like, well, this is really setting up to be a nice wave 4, and this is going to go back up. But it's continued to go down. So, I don't know. I'm going to make a judgment when this news comes out, what this looks like. If I kind of see this, heading into the news, kind of just moving sideways, kind of like up like this, where it's just kind of doing this type of thing, zigzagging up, then it's probably going to roll over and go back down. We'll see how this goes. On the daily chart, we're back to approaching this 200 EMA. You see prices come down to about the 200 EMA. So I had this originally as an ABC, but this could easily be also be a 1, 2, 3. This is the 4, and then it'll go up for 5. So if we look at the other Kiwi pairs, let's look at the Kiwi versus the yen. Again, I could see this as being a 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's pretty aggressively going up right now. I'm not sure if that's the weakness in the yen, so let's look at some of these other ones. Here's the Kiwi versus the US dollar, and again, one, we can label this here, 1, 2, 3, this is the 4, and maybe come down for 5. So down for a wave 5. Kiwi Swiss, I think, looks pretty much the same. There's the 4-hour chart. Let's zoom out a little bit here. Daily chart. I think this, certainly could have some more downside to go. But it's pretty aggressively moving up right now, but that's not always a bad thing, guys. A lot of times heading into these news events, you actually want to see price going the opposite way, because that's, just helps you get a better entry and potentially points to your setup being confirmed. So we'll see. Other thing I want to look at quick with some of the pound pairs. So the pound, as we know, yesterday took a pretty big hit. This was the daily candle yesterday, this red candle. And it's kind of consolidated around these areas now. Since then, this is where we came down yesterday, and we've just kind of stalled out since then, not really doing much. This is the pound versus the Kiwi. So, of course, this is all being driven with the pound by issues with now that they've voted to leave the European Union finally. Their next step is they have to work out trade deals with the European Union now that they've left, and they need to have that in place by the end of the year, and there's a lot of debate about whether they're going to be able to get a good trade deal negotiated inside of a year, which seems crazy to me, but that's the way it is. And so that's those conflicting reports that came out on over the weekend and Monday is what sent the pound lower yesterday. And you can see we've pulled back off all these lows. This is the pound versus the dollar. But it still looks fairly bearish. So we'll see what happens with these pound pairs. On pairs like this, this was a trend. You see I had this label from a while ago. Then this moved down. This could easily be, this is an A, and then this, and I have it labeled as such. So this is an A, then this move up is a B, and now we're moving down for C. And if this is a C that started right here, then this is going to come down pretty far, probably at least as long as this A. So, and there's a couple of them that look like this. So this is, call it 700 pips. Whoops, in which case this C, if that's what this is, this C is going to come down to somewhere around here, which from where it is now is another 350 pips from where it is now. So we'll see, but I would keep an eye on the pound pairs for continuation of the downtrends, and see whether there might be some opportunity to short this. The pound Aussie, of course, we had the Aussie strength again. We had this moving inside this channel. We came right back up and tagged it, and now we're coming down again off the strong Aussie news. So there's potential there to continue to look for short positions. I don't trade the pound a lot, mainly because a lot of the action on the pound starts during the very, very early London session, and then that's like 3, 4 in the morning for me, so it's just hard. Sometimes I'll set price alarms and wake up, but I miss a lot of these moves because I'm just not awake at that time. And by the time I get up, the moves are already underway, and I don't like to, as you know, jump on, try to catch a falling knife. So here's the pound Canadian. Much like the pound The pound yen just looks a little different. That this was a move down, then maybe this whole thing is an ABC up, and now we're turning down again for potentially for this wave C coming down. So we'll see what happens. Or is this, an ABC, now we got a wave 3 starting, in which case it's going to really go down. But either way, it looks, fairly bearish right now. And, that's what we just showed you on the pound versus the dollar. Pound yen versus the yen, same thing. Although, again, it's bounced off this, came down to this trend line. It's bounced real solid. But this is weakness in the yen more than strength in the pound. So, and pound Swissy, that's kind of a mess, so I'm not even really looking at that. And the pound versus the Kiwi, again, some of this is going to depend on what happens with the Kiwi tonight. So I think in terms of pound pairs, I'd continue to watch pound Canadian, pound dollar, pound yen for some clarity in the pound where that's going next. Okay, so those three pairs is what I'd be concentrating on. So, and again with the Kiwi, the early look is that the Kiwi will turn down, although the Kiwi is going up pretty aggressively right now. I don't really see any reason why, unless it's just kind of a little bit of relief from the coronavirus, maybe that issue peaking a little bit, and so there's some buying back of the Kiwi based on that after these substantial sell-offs. But if that employment news disappoints, then that certainly could at least provide some short-term weakness and maybe provide a good trade. So that's kind of the outlook, guys. So for the euro, for the Aussie, at least in the short term, I can expect to see the Aussie continue to strengthen a little bit, assuming that the coronavirus stuff doesn't flare up again. But longer term, fundamentally, I think the Aussie still is weak, so I'm not sure how long that uptrend will sustain. But at least in the short term, the Aussie probably will see some bid. The Kiwi, I would potentially look for shorts around the time of the news later today, potentially. And there's also more Kiwi news coming up later this week. It's tomorrow, or we had on Thursday we have, during the Asian session, we have Kiwi inflation expectations. This is another one to watch. So this will kind of go hand in hand. So if the unemployment numbers come out weak, and then this also comes out weak, or not really much better than the 1.8, then expect that to pressure the Kiwi further. So these two really will go hand in hand. This will be phase one, and then the second phase will be the inflation numbers on Thursday, the expectations, the outlook for inflation. And we also do have Aussie news tomorrow night during the Asian session for retail sales and trade balance. And if these disappoint, that also could, if these, let me put it this way, if these come out better than expected, that would feed into the bullishness on the Aussie, okay? Because the market's feeling a little bit more bullish on the Aussie, so if these numbers come in better than expected, and they're expecting a negative number on the retail sales, and a little bit worse on the trade balance. So if these numbers come out green, better than expected, expect that to potentially provide another boost to the Aussie. Okay, so, and then we have more Aussie news on Thursday with Governor Lowe and the monetary policy statement, which will be basically the follow-up to this up here. Okay, so don't expect necessarily anything new coming out of this. It'll probably just be a reinforcement of what we heard up here. But you never know. It's always worth paying attention. So the Aussie and the Kiwi still be in the spotlight the rest of the week with some more news coming up. But in the short term, I would look for some Kiwi, potential Kiwi move later on today. All right. And for the pound, like I said, watch the pound Canadian, pound dollar, pound yen for potentially more downside in the pound. But we need a catalyst, because that news in terms of the European Union and the Britain having some disagreements on trade, that's kind of spent right now. So we need another catalyst. Otherwise, it's just going to keep moving sideways. But if we get more negativity coming out of the Brexit talks, then expect the pound to turn negative again. So, all right, guys. So I'll leave it there. I hope you all have a good rest of the day, and make another video after that Kiwi news later on and see how that turns out. But that's the one I'll be looking at for potentially my next trade. So anyways, guys, that's it. Hope you all have a good rest of the day, and happy trading, trade safely, and we'll talk to you all soon.